Hey y'all. Today I have a bit of a open-ended discussion kind of video, so less informative and more an open video talking about what I want to see from seasons in Diablo 4. This isn't necessarily things specifically for Season 1, but things I want to see generally speaking for seasons throughout Diablo 4's lifespan. Of course, things like these things can change over time, but this is just where my head is at currently. We do have a dev stream happening on July 6th. That is this Thursday afternoon, where they're going to be talking a lot about Season 1, what we can expect, the season theme, any new seasonal mechanics, all that stuff. That's going to be happening this Thursday. I'll have a video going over that stuff on Thursday, if not by Friday. So do keep lookout for that. But there's a few key highlight points that I wanted to talk about for things that I want to see from seasons in Diablo 4. The first thing, and honestly one of the biggest things, is that I'm hoping that each seasonal mechanic that we get with the game is something that has some meat to it, something that feels engaging to interact with. You know, seasons are going to happen every 3 months, and if we want people to be resetting their characters and starting fresh every time, I think that the offerings of each season need to be engaging enough to warrant people wanting to have to start over again. Now, I've played many leagues and many seasons in other action RPGs like Diablo 3, Path of Exile, so I'm not a stranger to the idea of making a new character, but for a lot of people, I think the idea for making a new character is not exactly that enticing, especially if the seasonal content doesn't really enhance that leveling experience. That is probably not going to feel that different compared to what it is right now, at least for the first couple of seasons of the game. So I'm looking just for new systems, like new dungeon types, like with different objectives, like new dungeon layouts, like real enhancements to previous like existing systems in the game, like expansions and overhauls to systems. Like imagine if world bosses we got like new world bosses and they drop like new loot and they have like specific loot and maybe they spawn more frequently and maybe they're like a little bit more difficult so they don't die in like 5 seconds. Like maybe there's some stuff to iterate on there. Maybe like a new crafting league, right, where there's a whole new crafting mechanic where you can sort of make gear and sort of RNG your way into good pieces of gear with enough materials and things like that. These are just sort of broad examples, but you know, these are things that I think the game needs to have really good seasons. I think back to Diablo 3 and how some of their seasons were very basic, like double treasure goblin seasons. I believe that was like season 1 or one of the early seasons for Diablo 3, and I'm really hoping we don't have situations like that again, where the main, like, important thing that's new for the season is so simple, like double treasure goblins. Like, even if they buffed treasure goblin loot and then had double treasure goblin spawn rates or something, like, I don't think that's enough of a engaging system, right, to have people play through the game entirely again on a new character. So I'm hoping for a lot more like meat to the seasonal mechanic. Things like Path of Exile, where they have like the Immortal Syndicate was like a league mechanic that has this whole system to it. They have like the Atlas skill tree that got implemented a while back. That was more of an end game thing, right? But you know, more recently we had like the Crucible League, right? Like these are things that actually have substance to them and are like interesting to interact with. Now, a lot of Path of Exile's league mechanics can be pretty overwhelming and very complicated. I'm not saying we need to have something that intense or that in depth like we get in Path of Exile, but something in that nature, right? Like there's a spectrum between double treasure goblins and, you know, a lot of Path of Exile's league mechanics, right? Like there's kind of an in between there that I think Diablo 4 needs to try and find that are engaging enough to interact with for a new season, but also not as basic as double treasure goblins. You know what I mean? So yeah, something that's compelling to interact with. I think it's also important that the seasonal mechanic should not really be something that's specifically tied to endgame. This is not the same as me saying that a seasonal mechanic cannot include endgame elements in it, but if a season like mechanic, the main new thing for the season is something that you only interact with at like World Tier 4 or something, like at level 70 plus, then I think a lot of people are going to be pretty off-put by that, because I think one of the biggest things that they should try and avoid is having each season feel like you're just playing the base game leveling experience again, right? There should be something there that kind of spices up that leveling experience, like a new mechanic, a new event, or I don't know, something, right? To really enhance the experience in enough of a way that it's enjoyable to level again. Because if it's the exact same leveling experience as we have right now, then I think a lot of people are going to be pretty off-put by that. One of the next things that we are for sure going to be getting is going to be new items and new aspects. There are some skills in the game that have almost no aspects tied to them. I don't have every aspect in the game memorized in my head or anything, but as a barbarian main, I know that Whirlwind has like 3 or 4 specific legendary aspects tied to it, and then Upheaval, for example, only has like 1.5 aspects. There's the one where your Upheaval has a chance to summon the Echo of the Ancient to do that attack as well, and there's also the Hellhammer unique. But besides that, there's like nothing actually specific for Upheaval besides the unique hammer, which means you have to use that unique, and it also means it only drops at like World Tier 3 and up, so it's like, it doesn't feel great that some skills just have like nothing really to kind of beef them up specifically. But one thing that does concern me though, and this is like less about seasons specifically, but just about the way the game is going right now, is that a lot of items in the game, specifically a lot of legendary aspects, feel too powerful in terms of how build enabling that they are. This is a pretty big problem on druids, right, where they have like a couple of unique items where your build doesn't really work until you get this item, right? This feels like a problem to me because it's pretty similar to Diablo 3's set items, where you would wear the set bonus and some supporting legendaries, and that was the build. And I'm not saying that every druid build is going to be using one of these uniques, but all the really strong druid builds are going to be using these uniques and other aspects, where if you don't have it, well, sucks to be you. Get some better luck, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of feels like we're in that same sort of scenario in Diablo 3, where if you don't have the set, you don't really have much of a build going on. So I'm a little worried about the new items that they add, the new legendaries, new uniques and things like that. That might feel a bit too strong as a singular item. But this is just, we'll have to wait and see. But this is just a concern I have right now. So we'll see what happens. We'll be getting balance patches and balance changes, of course, with each new season release. They'll be buffing some skills. There might be some nerfs. We'll see what happens to try and beef up some other skills in the game. Upheaval fans, we got to stick together strong. Maybe they'll buff Upheaval. We'll see. But yeah, balance changes. We'll just have to read the patch notes for those when they come out and see how they go. They have mentioned that we will be getting a story quest with each season. I recall a dev livestream where they had talked before the game came out. It was back in May, I believe. They had a dev livestream where they talked about a lot of the seasons and kind of generally speaking about seasons for Diablo 4. And they mentioned that the story quests for seasons were going to be less focused on the overall narrative of the game and be a bit more focused on whatever the theme was for that season specifically. So it's not really going to have anything to do with the like Acts 1 through 6 campaign that we have in the game right now. It's not really going to be dealing with like Lilith or Anarius or any of that right now. At least that's what they've said. They could always change this, of course. But that was my understanding, was that each seasonal story is going to be a bit more focused to whatever that season was about. The story quests have been pretty good. The campaign was pretty good. A lot of the side quests are actually pretty cool and interesting, at least the first time when you do them. So we'll see what the story quests are like. There's a lot of... It could either go really good or really bad, so it's just going to have to wait and see for that one. We're going to be getting quality of life changes, of course. We have heard some word about quality of life changes. For example, the gems being converted into like a material currency into your material list. That'll be more like a Season 2 thing, which I'll talk about in a second. We'll hopefully be getting more stash tabs. Maybe we can like lock items in our inventory. Loot filter, maybe even like a rudimentary one that even just like only show me items above a certain item power, right? Or only show me ancestral items or something like that. You know, it doesn't have to be like full on Path of Exile loot filter style where you can like modify how the drops look on your screen and there's like a whole bunch of parameters you can change for that. Like, it doesn't have to be that intense, right? But I think even something as simple as like even just a toggle in the options menu of like only show me ancestral items or something, like even that would just help, so we'll see. But one thing that's worrying me a bit is the idea that we might only be getting big changes to the game when we get new season launches. I can be very sympathetic to game developers, right? Like, making games is pretty difficult and is not something I would be very good at myself, right? I understand that these things take time. Game development is not as simple as like flipping the loot filter switch and having it enabled in game, right? Like, it's not that easy. It's not that simple, right? But it worries me a bit whenever they talk about creating, or turning gems, for example, into a material so that you don't really have to worry about them filling up your stash or your inventory, right? And they say how that's like a season 2 change. And one thing I would like for them to try, or at least consider doing, and this is my main point that I'm getting at right now, is hopefully we can get some updates like that earlier than on season launches. If the Diablo dev team gets the gem material inventory figured out before a season 2, I would love for them to have like a mid-season 1 patch where they're like, hey guys, we have fixed the gem inventory problem and you don't have to wait till season 2. Like, that would be great, right? I know that they have a lot of scheduling for this. They probably have like a humongous dev team, I would imagine, working on Diablo right now. So getting all of this figured out and scheduled properly is probably a nightmare. But I would love if there would be some level of flexibility for updates for big requested features like the gem inventory and stuff like that. So I don't expect that one to be very likely, but it's just one of the things I would love for them to consider, at least, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's about all I have to say about new seasons. I have been enjoying Diablo 4 very much since it came out. I have some concerns and some issues with the game, of course, as we all seem to do, but I look forward to seasons going forward. I will be covering seasons, at least for the time being. I don't put out as much content as other content creators, but I hope that the content I do make is informative, or at least interesting enough for you all to watch. But I am very hopeful for the future of the game currently. I just hope that Blizzard does not squander it, because Season 1, I think, is going to be a pretty important next step in the game, because a lot of people are looking forward to Season 1, and if Season 1 doesn't really deliver, I think a lot of people are going to just not play the game again until maybe the next expansion. So we'll see how it goes. But we will be learning a whole bunch about Season 1 this Thursday, July 6th. I will be having some stuff covering that as well, so look forward to that later this week. Otherwise, I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.